was talking about that. I remember back when
Main Street Enfield, just a hard sell.
Yeah.
So.
You're good to go.
All right, it is 6 o'clock. I'm gonna call this meeting of the Enfield Select Board to order. And I'm gonna remember to have us introduce ourselves this time. So starting all the way to my left,
I'm Kate Plumley Stewart.
Tracy Young. John Klug.
Eric Russell, and Alice is running a little staff tonight. We have
Elisa, line off.
Ed Morris, town manager.
Whitney Banko, recording secretary.
Thank you. So we are starting this evening with a public hearing regarding the sale of the Shed Street property that the town owns. I would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So move. Second.
Aye. Okay, I'll start by just giving a little reminder of some of the history of it. This is a property that was previously the town's Department of Public Works facility. Over the last, during the original Municipal Facilities Advisory Group, they recommended selling that property 4 years ago now, I believe. I think the recommendation came out 4 years ago. So the town has taken on cleaning up the property, preparing it for sale. In the spring, we had the two required public hearings for the sale of property. The select board then voted to pursue that. We had an RFP. We received a single that from Bobby Oaks. And from there, we've had some non-public sessions regarding the sale of property. And this is bringing their proposal in just to have a public discussion about that before potentially entering an intent to sell with them. So we've gotten through to where the select board feels we're very close to entering a contract on that. But we wanted to make sure we had a public discussion of that before moving forward. So Ed, do you have anything else to lay the table for that?
No, I think you covered it on the two public hearings that are required for sale of property were done last April, May timeframe.
Mhm.
And I would say this is a courtesy public hearing to let the board know what we had planned to enter into an agreement for and to get public feedback before making that final move forward.
All right, so let's start out with, does anyone on the board want to make any initial comments? Otherwise, Chris Ross is here, I believe, to present from the heart of.
License plate RLB's lights are on.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, so, Chris, why don't you go ahead and, present the proposal?
Yeah, thanks. Christopher Ross, and I worked with Bobby Oaks, Oaks and Son Construction to come up with a proposal for a residential use of the Shed Street property. We've deemed it Shed Street Mills. And next slide. Here we can see the location of the property is right along part of the Northern Rail Trail. It's on Shed Street, which is a dead end street. This was a commercial spot, a commercial town civic use for their garages. And now it's been cleaned up, looks really great, ready for something. So what our proposal deems to do is recreate like a mill or industrial sort of setting or aesthetic on that street. It is typology, form wise, vernacular wise, it is appropriate for this area, or we felt it was appropriate for this area because right down the way is Baltic Mills. These mills, mill buildings, which are residential apartments, they're mix of 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom units. It creates a slightly smaller height and scale than Baltic Mill, but offers 48 units. There is some greens or decent amount of green space, and there's a new setback in this area. There's a whole rezoned idea behind what Shed Street could do. And this development that's on the page there respects that new zoning language. So we have two buildings here. Each building is about 24,000 square feet, about 12,000 square feet in footprint. It creates 48 units, as I said, and then the parking follows the current town ordinance on parking. So there's one per unit plus one for every four. We have some potential like event space or possibly or just engagement space for the tenants of the building, which is in these towers at the corners that we can go to the next slide there. So with the shape of the buildings, the L, we create a nice streetscape and we put all the parking to the inside. So coming along the streets, you get a bit of a glimpse of the parking. And the majority of it is this mill type streetscape with towers on the corners. We can skip ahead to the elevations. So it's a couple slides down. So here we are. So you have the towers in the corners. Again, that could be more civic space, more public access space, or it could be just amenity space for the tenants. The height is kind of carefully controlled. We have, it's just a bit above the current ordinance. The tower is a little bit above it, and so is the, just by a small amount. The main is only about 4 feet higher, so 39 plus or minus, and then the tower is another 8 or so. So it's context-wise, its objective is to relate to its setting along the rail trail and along the river there, and then again Baltic's down the way. So we can skip ahead to let's just go straight to the street perspectives, the colored ones. There's a corner view, and then here is here's a rendering looking to the east down Shed Street. Scale wise, again, I talked about the height in the just above or right at 40 for the gable. Each floor is about 14 foot at this current time. And in terms of building skin and stuff, not 100% sure. There's a bunch of different ways that this potentially could go, but the grid on the outside of the building, the scale of the windows, the break at the floor line, there's a bunch of detail that's shown on there that would remain, and it gives the building a nice scale, and they're fairly large, but some of these details really scale it down, and the building form itself is meant to be something new, but also something that connects back to some of the fabric and early founding of the town itself, or the development of the town later. So next view, we have Shed Street rises up as it goes towards the dead end, and we're looking back to the west here. And so again, a decent building density, but of a recognizable scale and a recognizable form in any New England city. Even Enfield back in the day. Some of these were demolished. There's old footprints all up and down all the rivers in town. And there would have been wood framed mill buildings that were in this rough range of height, about 40 something feet tall. But there we are. That's this shed. We're deeming this Shed Street Mills complex, and it's residential units, 48 of them, and then parking behind, and then that's your streetscape view.
Thank you. Are there any initial comments from the board?
I'll save a couple of comments for after the public hears. So,
So open the floor for public comment. If, you'd like to make a comment on what was just presented or the sale of Shed Street in general, this is a great time to raise your hand. Oh, go ahead. Oh, and just a quick reminder, please say your names for our minute taker.
Linda Jones. I was just wondering if you're marketing to elder housing or affordable housing or low-income housing, taking advantage of any of those current options.
We haven't really looked into that yet.
So for in terms of accessibility, there would be a requirement, given the number of units, to have them adaptable. So sale can go to any individual of any ability. So there's a percentage required of the units in the building to make adaptable. In terms of the site plan and the layout, there's a lot of really good accessibility. It's not a steep site. It's very flat. The town actually leveled it even more than it originally was. So there is an opportunity here to do it to create good accessibility, basically. But yeah, it's not in the kind of economics of the building besides federal regulations and state adopted regulations.
Yes, I'm Dr. Tice. I was just wondering what your setback from Mascoma River would be.
That is a good question. It is, I think it just barely skirts the 150. So, if the building mass itself skirts 150, then you have to go to like state, but, it's very close to that. We could pull, I guess we could pull up I can pull up the GIS and we could come back to that question really in a moment, and I'll get you a more accurate number.
Thank you.
Kurt House. So what, I got, the ridge line, the main ridge line, I understand is gonna be 39-40 feet, and that's approximates. But the tower, I misunderstood, didn't quite understand what you meant by plus 8 feet. So the actual tower height?
About 50.
50, okay.
Yeah.
And will there be, easy access for the residents there, to the rail trail?
Yes, so there's an arrow pointing to a landscaped area near a few guest parking spots in the page upper left corners. And those will be, that's at least the start of creating a rail trail connection. So they'll be graded and made formal.
And at least an entrance?
Yeah, that's correct.
A
Yeah.
visual entrance?
Yeah.
physical entrance.
Yeah, part of the landscaping, and there'll be a nice tree buffer back there still. There's new plantings in a couple different rows. We have a little more space on the more easterly part of the lot, just to, so we planted more trees there, but yeah, there'll be a tree buffer, but there'll be actually a bit of a visual connection to the rail trail.
Okay.
And physical.
Any proposed commercial space inside the buildings?
No, I don't think so.
Not at the moment. It's not designed to be a mixed use building. There's a little bit of opportunity, at least to provide community oriented use for the residents there with the towers. And I've also planned a pretty large kind of atrium space that's double height. So there'll be great light characteristics and try to create like a really pleasant place to live. So most likely that space will be
Yeah.
used for tenants.
For tenant, yeah, tenant use only.
That's correct.
And did you say, I don't know if I missed it, the unit size, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom?
2, and they're about 860 plus minus.
Square feet?
So they're good size.
I can show the map if you want, but it is right about 150. It looks like at the closest spot.
Okay.
Did you raise your hand? Beth? Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Don McMeekin, I was curious about what you're doing with the water runoff in the parking towards the river.
So on this site, so we do, I'll talk about the roofs first, and then I'll talk about the parking. So the roofs themselves are hipped, so we would have water runoff on most sides. Just do the hip, well, they're not hipped on the gables, excuse me, the tower is hipped. So right at the moment, with the orientation of the ridge lines, you have runoff, east-west and north-south. It would be guttered and it would go into, probably go underground or go into different planted areas. If we need for retention of soils, for retention of water or kind of washing it slightly on site, the front yards are pretty big, so we could do something there. And then, the northeast, north is up on the drawings. The northeast corner is, there's plenty of space there. There's plenty of space along the north, on the building number 2, the most easterly building. It's a little tighter to deal with runoff, but there's plenty of space on the, more western building to swale it all and deal with it in a respectable manner. The topography rises up to get onto the rail trail for the most part. And there's a really good green buffer between the rail trail itself and the river, so there won't be any runoff that would be detrimental to the, and in fact, a lot of it's gonna get improved probably over it is now because there's no sidewalk and no swaling along this property at Shed Street right at the moment, and that'll all be done as part of the work.
Because you know, the water flow would be back on towards the river.
It's gonna go, it can't on this case, so it's gonna go like page right to page lower left. And actually, I've done that with the initial grading or the initial proposed heights when I was planning it out in the perspectives, the 3D perspectives, is that building, the eastmost building is up higher than the westmost building. So we can grade from east to west and then grade from, like crown the property, right? From on the north and south.
And all that, so the another just sort of piece is like the stormwater management plan is part of the planning board's planning process. And any project will have to go through that process and they'll have to have stormwater management plans.
Not there yet.
No, we're not there. This is purely getting the
Concept.
proposal out there so the select board can make a decision on selling the property. So. All right, so several hands, so go ahead and come back.
I was wondering, Chris, are there on-site places for doing laundry, or do you assume that each unit will have its own laundry facilities, or is there communal laundry?
It's not totally decided, but given the size and the technology out there these days for like ventless washers and dryers, you know, we want to hit some pretty good energy targets for this building because it's, you know, it's just sensible nowadays. It doesn't add huge sums. So probably ventless washer dryers, they might be like single units, so you can wash and dry in one. And there's enough space, right? It's a decent size, 860 is a really good number to have in-unit washing and drying.
There's a couple, yep, right here in front.
Renee Regan, what is your estimate that the units will rent for?
That's a great question. Between 2 or probably around 2 to 2,400. That's just estimated. I could get you more.
But also, I'll remind, this is really around, you know, selling the property.
Yeah.
And, so we are taking into account everything that they say, but if in the end, 2 years from now, if you can't be able to, go ahead. Ed.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is very conceptual.
Right,
I mean, good
conceptual.
questions, but a lot of this is more planning board type questions. We're on the conceptual. This is, I guess, the negotiation between the select board And Oaks Company was sale price and a conceptual project. And, you know, the drawings pushed it a little bit past conceptual, but we kind of wanted to get to that space before we felt comfortable. So, I mean, keep the questions going, but
Yeah.
understand that a lot of this stuff hasn't been vetted
Well,
out.
hasn't been, they haven't fleshed it all out yet, given where we are in the project.
Dan Regan, it looks really interesting. I think it's great use of the space if it comes together. Has the select board announced yet how much we're selling the property for? Or you in position?
Yeah, so the sale price would be $80,000. Is that, I get that right? Yep, so $80,000. And, the overall contract, there's a few other things that we want to make sure in there in terms of, the time frame for the project. Like if nothing happens in 15 years, it didn't go through. And Bobby's been very.
It's a lot less.
I see that number out as a very clear, that's too long.
Yeah.
But again, the project's in development, so there's still some negotiations going on exactly what the right sort of timeframes and everything are.
No, I think it was that, and the select board really looked at the project proposed.
Yeah.
You know, the housing issue that it helps us address, and the long-term tax income
Yeah.
from that, and tried to weigh all that
Yeah.
together to see what would be a good project proposal and a good price point to
Yeah.
to help make this come to fruition, but also to recoup some of the money we've
And-
put forward into this.
And if you were to take 48 units, say $150,000 per unit, that's a slightly more than $6 million property. And well, this is a tough year to estimate revenue because we don't know what our new tax rate will be. But that's a significant, increase to the overall tax base, and it also expands the user base for the sewer and water users as well. So there's both of those considerations as well.
That's, so the best case scenario, everything flies through, you get planning board approval quickly. You have an estimated, start and finish time?
We would like, our goal is 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5 years?
Yeah.
Which when you consider that this would require a zoning variance as well for the height of the building, so they'd have to do zoning, they'd have to
Yeah,
do
that's what I'm
plans.
saying, like,
Yeah.
best case scenario.
Yeah.
Everything just falls right in line and
Yeah.
there's no hiccups and.
You guys talked last time about it possibly being phased, so like one building then the next.
The two buildings are totally identical. There might be slight changes from depending on how geotech comes back and civil comes back. But each building from the ground up is identical. So it allows for easy phasing.
Okay,
I just want to add to, some of the discussion the select board had was about feedback we've gotten through other processes, right, and listening. So, you know, there's an affinity in New England for pitched roofs, right? And if you propose a flat roof, then people have, so some of the things that we asked for and the dimensions within the building, instead of just having a flat ugly box, are the things that are going to require some of these. So when you ask, we are the ones who said, you know, would you consider? And then to make those considerations work, they're going to have to do that footwork. So I just wanted to tell you that this wasn't a like, hey, we pitched this giant crazy project where we're gonna get a bunch of. The select board asked them to make it fit and to be respectful of our history, our culture, and the surroundings.
Yeah, we were very concerned about the aesthetics of the buildings. We didn't want just, as you say, a couple boxes sitting there.
It sounds like you haven't made a decision necessarily on the exterior finishes yet. You had described a couple of possibilities just as staying away from a lower end vinyl siding. I'm not objecting necessarily to high end vinyl siding, mind you, but lower end vinyl siding. You haven't refined that concept at all, have you?
No, I have not.
Other than we'd stay away from low end vinyl siding.
The one thing-
Really low end, huh?
Now,
The one thing you made right into the agreement was that he would work with the select board on that decision.
Yeah. You had agreed that you might put in sidewalk and curb. My question to you is, would you be willing to accept the winter maintenance of that sidewalk so that we don't have to send the town sidewalk plow over there?
Let Ed weigh in on that.
We can't do that.
We can't ask them to accept it?
It's state
No,
law.
it's state law.
That's state law.
I asked that question already. I tried that
Yeah.
one, sorry.
So we can kind of work with them a little, but no, that's, I mean,
So that's
we'll work
something
through
we'll have to
some of those
consider.
details, but it's something that our DPW would probably have.
So I was surprised to look that anybody who comes and builds something and puts it in, basically, we get to own. So if you go build one in some random spot, we have to drive out there and do it. And I was like, whoa, we don't want to be driving all over Kingdom Come for random.
There's some nuances in there we can work.
I know,
wouldn't
but
Explain to the statement that if we may be able to
Well,
get to something, but.
I'm gonna put a sidewalk in front of my house and see what works. I'm kidding.
Anyway, let's refocus on this property.
Underground utilities, needless to say. Okay. And you had alluded to the fact that there would be some level of internal laundry facilities. So that we wouldn't have to worry about satisfying the tenants and recreating a laundromat, which we no longer have.
That's
Okay. All right.
You guys know there's like an all-in-one washer and dryer now, right? You throw it all in and it does the whole thing. I don't know if everybody's had to see it. Well, I know you've done it, but
Try to refocus it just
Yeah.
around the sale of the property, not the design,
well, I'm like,
not what utilities they choose to put in there.
exactly.
That's fully his decision. This
Yep,
is,
I agree with
should
you.
we move forward with a sale with the intent to build 48 new housing units? That would add a new type of,
And then regardless of how the sidewalk slash curb concept works out, you wouldn't have parking in front of the building, correct? Even though we have one that's set back, that would be landscaped area, and I see a line of trees anyway.
Yeah, we'll have to deal with some sort of swales and stuff at any rate.
Yeah, there may be a rain garden, who knows, but
Yeah, no parking. On the street.
do you want to run through the sort of the intent to sale document at this point, or is that better for after the public hearing?
I think now is the time, right?
You could probably do it after. Let me see. if I can
Okay.
Pull it up real
I
fast.
just don't know if there's any details in there that we want to make sure people are aware of. It's a pretty straightforward
Yeah.
document. Are there any other comments from folks on this? All right, we can do, oh, sorry.
Linda Jones, I just wondered if you were thinking of any low energy, like making it solar, geothermal, or make the units more efficient.
Yeah, possibly, yes.
Just in terms of building orientation, they represent an opportunity to have a significant amount of solar, given the pitch exposures. So you have a bunch of east, you have a lot of south, so there's opportunity for alternative energy.
Make them more saleable.
and I think I read in your concept that it's an all-electric building with heat pumps.
I mean, that's likely for sure.
That was in here, so
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you wouldn't be
Yeah.
getting into any level of fossil fuel heat or hot water.
With the potential for, I don't believe it's mentioned about solar, but with the potential for renewables on the roofs of these buildings and the efficiency of the building itself. Yeah, electric seems a perfect choice here.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Kurt.
This one's for the select board. My understanding, this was the only, proposal to builds. Did you try reposting or was this pretty much what we're gonna get?
Well, Ed can say more, but certainly the RFP was sent directly to people.
It was sent to
Yeah.
multiples,
It sounded like people missed it.
folks in them
Yeah,
were
yeah, that's-
on time. we did work with a couple others and give them a little bit more time to try to put in and still receive nothing.
Okay, yeah.
We did go through multiple avenues of doing that.
We did make an effort to
Yeah.
see what would come in.
Just
Yeah.
for the public knowledge.
Yeah, yep. And this came in, you know, to my mind, quite responsive. It's, you know, architecturally similar to what's been in the village. It adds housing. It's in the, where we have water and sewer. It expands our tax base, it expands our user base,
Yeah, I
water and sewer.
There's a lot
You
of
know,
positives.
So there's
going on,
there's a lot,
which is,
you know.
Yeah.
It's a type of housing we don't currently have in Enfield in terms of, you know, 2-bedroom, single floor apartments are not something we have currently. So. All right, last
I can
chance.
go through a few of these. It's probably easiest if I just read through it
Yeah,
and try to show it, but as we said, purchase price was $80,000. There were some conditions put on it. That, I mean, some of the things you would just expect, that it would be similar in style and the amount of living unit that's presented in attachment A. As we said, this is conceptual. As we move through, things might change a little, but we're expecting to get what they said they were gonna build. As I stated, the developer agrees to work with the select board while finalizing design of exterior finishes. Continue working through that. Scroll down.
and I think the real takeaway from sort of the intent to sell document is that there's a number of conditions. Some of them are relatively loose, but including that the construction be very similar to what the concept that's been presented, which I think is important.
We cleaned, but we agreed
Yeah.
to make sure that the site has a clean bill of health for
Yep.
them to build on. That they're able to get the variances and pass site plan and those types of conditions. We don't want them to be stuck to this
Right.
if they can't, if we don't allow them to build it in Enfield. That 80,000 would be the price, and that does not include tax incentives and different things from the town to make that even more lucrative at that time. If we move into that, we'll have to renegotiate price. That's pretty much it.
Yep.
It's Pretty,
Yeah.
pretty simple and straightforward, but you know, this is what they proposed and this is what we were looking at selling it to them for, as long as we get the buildings that we believe we would be getting.
Any final, last chance? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to exit the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Aye. Right. Discussion from the board. What is your pleasure?
I think we'll wait to see Ed's, letter of intent, final copy.
but this is it.
That was, he sent it to us. It was in our,
Yeah,
It's in your packet.
it was in the.
Oh, that, you want to use that as the final copy? Because we made several comments about it after that.
I think we made everything,
But they were in there.
and everything that was in there, was what you guys had talked about.
I definitely felt
Yeah.
that it honored our discussion.
And if you guys would like to make a motion, it would, the way that it was written would be to authorize me to enter
Right.
into a letter.
Is there something you think is missing, Tracy?
I am only concerned about holding their feet to the fire in terms of the construction schedule.
Mhm.
I understand 3 to 5 years is certainly an appropriate time for total completion. But I'd like to see something started before 3 years.
Well, I think we discussed this last time.
Yeah.
That's what we put into the final
final
contract,
sale.
of intent to sell. And that was agreed upon, that we would,
That the sale document would have that in it, because it's hard at this point. Like if it takes a year to get through.
No question.
Planning.
That's what I meant. After all, planning and board,
Yeah.
planning and zoning is not. So you'd be willing to accept in the final sale, some sort of, statement as to beginning in an appropriate fashion very shortly, season permitting, following planning and zoning.
It would have to be negotiated to be appropriate.
I think they would have a better idea of what the reasonable time frame would be at that point as well.
But you'd be willing to move along fairly swiftly once a bill of sale was
Yes.
allowed. Just as a real foolish notation, only because I've run into it recently. Being a neighborhood, working hours are going to be an important consideration. We don't have a per se construction zoning ordinance in this town. So I would want to see something that respected the fact that it is a residential neighborhood.
What do you recommend?
I'm not gonna recommend, I'm just going to say that's not something you can work with Ed.
Yeah, we can work with them. I think we normally start 7-ish, but we also go
Yeah.
up to 6 sometimes for some things, but you know.
I don't want to tie your hands. I'm just saying, to be respectful of the community,
Yeah.
I think it makes some sense to give that some thought.
Definitely.
So would anyone care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to authorize the town manager or their designee to sign the letter of intent to sell the Shed Street property to Oaks and Sun Drywall Independent Services LLC.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion of the motion on the table? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. That's great. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
You guys have done a lot of work in the last 6 months.
I'll get it with you and make it. You know, you did that electronic signature, but we'll get together and sign it.
Today or?
No.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on, next item on the agenda, approval of minutes. October 7th.
I think as usual, from my perspective, they were quite good and very detailed considering a very involved public hearing, and I thought you did an excellent job
And very long
keeping track
minutes.
of not only the personnel who spoke up, but the gist of the meeting itself. It was very good.
We're here. I would make a motion to approve the minutes, both public and non-public of October 7th as printed.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are complete. All right, board reports. John, do you wanna get us started?
No,
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't bring my notes from the budget meeting.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It moved along.
All right, yeah, Ed'll have some comments. on the
I'll put some in my.
Right, Tracy.
No, we haven't met with the Energy Committee since our last meeting, but we'll meet tomorrow night.
Okay,
Conservation meets once a month, so we haven't met since the last meeting, but they will be at,
Community's office has tips to ensure you don't get scammed.
Conservation will be at Trunk or Treat handing out candy coming up, so. And our next meeting is November 7th. Right here, so you can all come hang out with us if you want.
By the way, in my defense, I got a flu shot and a COVID shot this afternoon.
Thank you.
all right.
We all thank you.
Alice?
Eva is getting ready to take the scarecrows down and start decorating downtown for the holidays. I think Dawn Archambault is coming back temporarily to lead the hometown holidays calendar. And so she'll be reaching out to people in the community and trying to include Canaan events on that calendar as well this year. So we're really excited about that. As always, they're looking for volunteers and board members. Particularly people with technical know-how like computers, website, places where we might not be so strong. And the Heritage Commission has not met yet. They're meeting later this week.
Planning board continues to refine potential zoning changes for the ballot this year, along with planning for the more extensive rewrite and some discussion around the HOP grant proposal that went in, and getting some templates together for to get us started on that. And also TIF committee met, reviewed the plan, looked at the projects that are happening this year, including the Whitney Hall parking lot, and the floodway study. The quote for that came back at higher than expected. So that will likely get split between this year and next year. And asked Ed to get a second quote, you know, to at least attempt to get more quotes before going with the higher amount. And then discussed potential 2025 project, nothing to really put out there yet, but looking at potentially Hughes Park parking lot, some planning for potential sidewalk improvements and expansion, and then maybe some parking signs signage for around town. And then some very initial discussions around Oak Grove Street and what we would need to know in order to potentially do something there.
That's a big issue.
It is. That's more than a one meeting. Let's issue. All right. Town managers report.
All right, so budget report, I'll have to apologize to Dan, but he gave the budget committee a CIP update. And we were gonna do one at this meeting and I forgot to put it on the agenda, so if you're okay, we'll put it on the next agenda. Give you guys an update of the plan. And then I went through just some compensation findings, what I'd put in the budget and what we were seeing around the state. We decided, I think the select board was involved in this last year, some to use Boston metric COLA year to year from July to July to set a date. That came back at 3.5% this year, which was a little higher than I'd hoped, but we put that in and we're planning on implementing that second part of the compensation plan that we also talked about last year, being a 2-year phase-in plan to get us to where we need to be. That put the average raise of our, I don't want to say full-time, but regular staffed positions at about 4.5%. So we put that in the budget. We'll continue, looking at that budget and other budgets as we move through the budget process, but that's really what we discussed at the budget meeting last week. And this week we'll be talking about our emergency services, fire, police, and ambulance and what we've proposed for them for this year. From a staff report, nothing's changed. We're still down one groundskeeper position and we'll be looking for one of them. So if you know somebody that might want to be a groundskeeper, send them our way. We'll be working on that coming into winter. Whitney Hall and public safety buildings continue to go pretty well. And we have our bumps in the road, but nothing really big yet. At the last meeting, I talked to you about possibly having some problems with the wood floor upstairs. I'm happy to report we got through that and it looks really good for what the floor is. It does have some scars from its 100 years of use, but overall it came out really well. A lot of the construction people on site and everybody were surprised at how well it actually has come out. So good to get through that problem without having to spend a lot of extra money. And other than that, they continue to put finishes in. The library level's fully carpeted now. Putting in some of the woodwork and desks throughout the building. So we're just excited to do that. Today, you may have seen a crane there. They were putting the air handlers on the roof. So like I said, we're kind of finalizing it. The big green transformer went in front of the building this weekend. So happy to see that. And hopefully we get a full power into the building soon, really soon.
Ed gave me a tour of the building, my first view of the interior, and it was very, very exciting. It's going to be a beautiful space and is so good for our employees and for the town.
And then the public safety building, it continues to go well too. Anybody driving by can almost see the changes day to day now. All the walls are up, interior, exterior. The roof trusses are all on. They're sheathing it, I think, as we speak on the office side and scheduled to have roofers to dry in the building next week. So we're continuing to move forward. They're putting in sewer, if you see them digging in the ground this week. So water's tied in, sewer's getting tied in. And so that project still continues to move forward well. And we're still looking at a May completion date or substantial completion date. So I'm happy to see that project go forward. It's a little more exciting and taking a little more of my time at Whitney Hall right now to make sure all the finishing projects go well. But we are excited to get them both done. Police update, the police will be out on Halloween night from 5 to 8 o'clock, guiding traffic. I have heard that the fire station will be open giving candy. Do want to remind people that the Trunk or Treat is the official town event, which will be Saturday, the 26th. If you'd like to have a car in the Trunk or Treat or like to participate, give Evan or Kevin a call or an email at enfieldrecreation.enfield.nh.us. With that, continuing on the police department, they have signed up for the drug take back, which is also on October 26th from 10 to 2 o'clock at the transfer station. And then the police department has been working with Lindsay, the moderator, to coordinate security and other police department issues, and I was told fire department issues, because they do lighting in the parking lot when it gets late, to just make sure that the election goes smooth on November 5th. So with that, Chief Holland has also been working with Jim Taylor and DPW on the downtown parking project that we talked to a few weeks ago at the select board meeting. So I just wanted to let you guys know that that is being worked on. Rob Taylor pulled together a map of all the town-owned parking lots, and like I said, Chief and Jim Taylor have been working on, what different types of parking to allow where, and we will be bringing that back to you. I'll say soon, but I don't know exactly what that means. But in the next few months, you'll be getting something on that to update our rules and regulations around parking in the downtown area. As we've talked about, the HOP 2.0 grant has been submitted, and we're looking to receive word on that hopefully by the end of the year, whether we get that grant and get a move forward. And then I have submitted, actually, I got information. I don't even know if I've told you guys about the byways grant that we got for the trails. They're opening a second round of that funding. So I was notified by the state that that was coming, and they encouraged us to apply for the construction part of that project. I have put in a letter of intent to apply, and I'm working with Pathways Consulting right now to pull some costs together from their engineering, and I'll be back to the select board for final approval to put in for that grant. You may have seen that there's I think there was some chatter before the meeting on it, that there's a coffee shop going to planning board for site plan review and some discussion. So that's exciting for downtown. We'll continue working on that. From a DPW point of view, they're really trying to wrap up some fall projects and some last minute projects getting ready for winter. They've been working on fall grading. They've continued to replace culverts. You guys have probably seen some of the road closures coming out. So we're thank them for getting that work done. They have turned in the lead service line inventory that was due this month. They have released an RFP to replace the gas tank out here and to replace the fans in the bays that was on the CIP project list. And they're getting ready, hopefully next week, but we'll see when they get done, to do the paving of the sidewalks around Whitney Hall. That's one of the things they were slated to be done by the excavating company, and in discussions with DPW and the excavating company, we believe with our new sidewalk machine, we can get in there and get that done cheaper, and I'm gonna say faster, but cheaper to get that done and to let them get some paving around Whitney Hall. And then you may have seen the DPW crew out there. They've been inspecting the water sewer connections of public safety building, making sure everything's going well there. And then I told you she was coming back, but Jim wanted me to share with you that Chantel is back and mom and baby are healthy. I should also probably announce that Daisy from the clerk's office is now out, and she did have her. And that's all I have.
And I just wanted to, I don't know who put the construction worker scarecrow in front of Whitney Hall, but it has been like tickling everyone who lives on Main Street, drives on Main Street, and so whoever did it, we appreciate that they, and Eva, just, it wasn't Eva, and they just loved that they joined in the fun, so that was nice.
Okay.
Across from Whitney Hall, the state had poured, you know, those off ramps, and when they did it before the sidewalk got widened. So I noticed the sidewalk is nice and wide and it's paved, and then there's this gap. Can that be filled at the same time?
The pavement has been there for years. They
Well, it
didn't
was
do that
widened.
This year,
It
but
was widened.
yeah, our guys are gonna come back and fix that.
Okay, cause yeah, it was that ours got a little, I know it's the right of way, but I was like, oh, we ended up with a gap.
No, it was, I'm gonna say planned that way. They went there, they knew it was wider.
Yeah.
We put some gravel in and they're gonna re-pour that.
I just worry stroller, wheelchair.
Yeah.
Oops.
No, it was planned at the time to come back and fix that.
Couple of minor points. Can we arrange to have the, school bus marked Norwich moved on the day of the trunk or treat? It is a Saturday and in the past, that's been parked in the parking lot on Saturdays. Chief? You raised your hand.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. Yeah, so that gentleman was, he will no longer be parking there after this week. He was, we had a good conversation and he's finding a new location to park it. And so we don't even have to worry about the November 5th. After this week, he won't be there at all.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
That's great. I noted that we filled in, the sidewalk and, road paving on the approach to, the lake, which is great. I assume we'll be seeding that, hopefully.
Yeah, it's a little late this year to seed it.
Actually, it's not. You can seed up until, November 1st. Having done an awful lot of it, I can tell you that factually. Because you'll be mulching it.
Well, we're probably tearing it out next year to put gravel in, but
Oh, you'd go gravel in between the sidewalk and the road rather than,
personally, I'd
planting?
rather do that than grass. Cause the cars will destroy the grass.
They're gonna drive on it.
it'd look awfully nice, though. Quick little point, I assume they're gonna be striping the Mascoma Lake Park before the end of the season. Try to catch what little warm weather we have left.
We'll see. We're working with Blacktop still to see if they can get the final coat of asphalt on it because it was not done properly to begin with. And Blacktop has stepped in and said, they weren't the company that originally did it,
Right.
but they stepped in and said that they would help us out and get it done, and the company that was in charge of the parking lot's gonna pay them for it. But they're trying to squeeze us in their schedule, so whether it gets striped or not before this winter, that.
That would obviously affect that, yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's all I had.
Any other questions for town manager? All right, on to the business of the evening, starting with the police canine grant discussion. What, you following?
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hey.
So, what you have before you is the Enfield Police Department was invited to apply for a grant. It is a non-competitive grant. The grant is a 5-year grant that fully pays for the first 3 years, 100% of, implementing a police canine unit into the Enfield Police Department. That includes, outfitting a cruiser, the purchase of the dog, all the training, and reimbursing the town up to, I think it was $1,100 a week for the officer to attend the certifying training. The canine, as everybody I'm sure might be aware of, right, a police canine unit is a force multiplier. And the fact that it would add a resource to the town of Enfield that we haven't had, I don't know that we've ever had a canine unit in the town of Enfield. The canine and the officer would be certified in drug detection, tracking, and then patrol. I'm happy. So the way the grant works is that we apply for it. It's a pretty quick turnaround. We apply for it. Again, it's a non-competitive grant and we've been invited to apply. So once it's approved, they cut us a check for the full $32,000 that covers the first 3 years. The town of Enfield would then be responsible for a minimum of 2 years after that. We agree to keep the canine officer and the canine on for a minimum of 5 years. The working life of a canine dog is usually 7 to 9 years. In those 2 years, I talked to Lebanon, and the average is about $1,200 a year per canine dog team, and what that covers is food and vet bills for that. We've already actually had several people step up and actually asked to sponsor the last 2 years and cover that. But I'll go on the safer side and say that the Enfield PD is willing to work through our budget and absorb it within our budget without increasing it for that specific reason, to bring a canine unit onto the Enfield Police Department. I think it's a great force multiplier resource for our police department. Just in the last 3 months, we've had a canine assistance at least 4 times. And all 4 were for tracking. And that's my main concern of wanting to bring a canine unit onto the town of Enfield. One was for mental health reasons. One was an elderly person that had dementia and kind of walked away. And then 2 were for suspects that, had fled into the woods, stuff like that. And all 4 times we had to wait for the response of, actually 3 of the 4 were state police, which took a little over an hour timeframe. And so, I think this grant opportunity is a great opportunity for town of Enfield to, introduce a canine unit into our police department.
And you have staff who are willing to become the canine officer?
We do. So all this came about, we do monthly counseling and quarterly counseling with all our officers like that. And I was talking with one of the officers, Corporal Smith, who had expressed interest in possibility of being a canine officer someday. I said, well, go find me a grant that'll help pay for it. And he found it. He brought it to me, and I'm sitting here today talking to you. One of the other, I guess you say, byproducts of having a canine unit is it's also it's a retention thing too, right? You sign somebody on as a canine officer, the canine is a member of the Enfield Police Department. That officer decides to leave, go someplace else, the dog stays with Enfield. And so, that's also another retention thing, right? You get somebody who, you're a canine officer, your dog's good for 7 to 9, works for 7 to 9 years. You want to stay and work with your dog, and that's, it's another retention tool for the town of Enfield. So.
I noticed, so it's a green dog, so will it come to us altered so that, because it's a significant expense to have them altered, I'm assuming.
Not for the first year. It's within the 3 years that they're paying.
Okay.
But it's, we've met with, so there's 3 main training, teams, training teams in the state of New Hampshire. So we met with 2 of the 3. And, they've both said, they don't alter the dog for at least the first year.
Okay, so we would be getting it before, we'd be getting it before the year so that we're working with it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And I think what they mean by green though is that it's a non-trained dog. You get the dog that, the dog and the officer are learning everything the first time together.
That works for me. So I think in the vet care though, that to alter a full-size dog is more than it's very expensive, which I'm fully embrace this. I just know as a owner of people, dogs that are large, it's expensive. So would you consider, instead of the vet care allowance, doing a vet care allowance, but pet insurance? Because, and I don't know if you can get pet insurance as a PD, but I think that might cover some of the offset some of the costs. And then if there was a significant injury, it would help with our exposure a little bit.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into it.
Okay.
The reason I'm here really is just to make sure, I didn't want to go apply for the grant and have them say, yeah, we'll give you the $32,000 and then come back to the select board and
with a dog.
I think-
well, with doing all that work, and then you guys say, yeah, we're not really interested in, we're good with it,
Are there other questions from the select board?
Just that it looked, just the $1,200 per year annual cost.
Hmm.
But when you look up in the middle, like the vet at $1,000 a year and the food at $1,650 per year is already more than the
Yeah.
$1,200. So we,
Yeah, and that's because the first 3 years that you have the dog, you have to go to the vet more often. And so, and that's, again, that's, when I talked with, Lebanon, who has 3 canine units, I got their average, and they said their average, what they, allowance for food and for their vet bill. So I think they told me that their vet bills were like $600 something a year for vet bills for their dog, and then $600 some for food.
That sounds fair.
So
I-
that's just kind of checkups and, this and that. That obviously doesn't include like
No
the taking
catastrophic.
actually I'll look into the pet insurance thing for that, so.
The reason I don't recommend it for people with multiples, if you can self-insure, but for a single,
Mhm.
it's almost always a win if you pick the right one.
I can reinforce that.
Oh, just,
Do you feel the 4 calls in 3 months is a fair representation of the usage?
I think that I think there's many more opportunities that we could have used a dog, but it's so long to get the dog, we didn't.
Mhm.
You know, anytime somebody, you know, goes missing in Enfield, you know, and we start looking for them, to have a canine that's, you know, one of the things that we want to focus on is the tracking part. On staff is just a game changer to have a response in 20 minutes. You know, if he's not on duty, if he's on duty, already there, but 20 minutes versus an hour to 2 hours is huge, so.
Cause my thoughts on sort of the usage rates are that a regional approach would be better than Enfield having their own unit.
Sure, and it used to be that way. We used to call Lebanon
Yeah.
all the time, but Lebanon is so busy with everything nowadays. Every time we call Lebanon, again, I'm not picking on Lebanon, they're just really busy. They say they're just not available, so we have to depend on state police.
Yeah, but certainly, and a 1 hour response time for the state police sounds reasonable to me. And a regional approach, you know, for something that's gonna be 16 to 20 uses per year.
Yeah.
Is a pretty low usage rate for a new program. Yeah, I do have one specific question. So they're sending Green Dog. What happens if the dog doesn't work out?
Then they provide another one.
They will provide another one.
Yeah, the breeders that they have specific breeders that provide dogs to the
Yeah.
programs. And if that dog doesn't work out, then they provide another dog. And that was one of the examples they
And
provided.
there's no additional cost.
No,
Okay, I asked specifically because I have a family member who works in law enforcement who received a dog that didn't work out,
gotcha.
and had to get a second dog.
But I assume you'd be working, you'd allow the dog to work in the high school, for example, middle school, on an as-needed basis, and introduce the dog to that population.
So the dog or the dog team, the officer and the dog would be available just as we are for mutual aid now, you know what I mean? This night, we don't want a dog, so the dog, you know, I learned a lot going through just the beginning of this process, just meeting with the teams and talking with the head instructors and stuff like that. So certain, you know, the PD sets the tone for your dog, right? You know, we've all been around, or I'm assuming, a lot of people have been around a cruiser and you walk up to it and the dog is just very aggressive, right? We absolutely don't want that. And then there's some places that the dog, is on the other far end of that spectrum where, they're more of a,
therapy.
yeah, therapy dog and that. But those dogs, you know, the caution on that is that they're not good at the tracking and stuff like that. We want in the middle there, right? We want our dog to be friendly and approachable and this and that, but we also want the dog to be efficient in, you know, tracking and drug work. We're less worried about the patrol work, but that is part of the training that they receive. So yes, in the fact, if Canaan called and said that they needed, a track or a drug dog, you know, to come over, we absolutely would be supporting them. They would also be part of, a regional team. And so, which actually is a great resource in the fact of, like when I was meeting with the instructor, they have 20, I want to say 20, it was 27 dog teams. By the time we were through, there'd be a little over 30 on this team. And so say Enfield had a big thing that we needed more than one dog team, that being part of that team, they would send 4, 5, 6 additional dog teams to help out, and we would reciprocate into that team too as well.
What's the schedule for submission of the grant?
It's an open grant.
Okay.
And so, we would like to submit sooner than later because the training schedule is that in, December, they're gonna start the next phase they're gonna start, so there's 2 different phases of training. There's, drug detection training or patrol training and drug detection training. And you can flip flop them. So right now, there's a class going on of patrol training, which includes a tracking. in December, I think it was, he said that they're gonna start, a drug training and, we would like to potentially, be involved in that one, but there's no
Yeah.
hard, fast deadline.
Okay.
And your officer's family is okay with it?
Yeah.
Because that's where the dog's gonna live.
It is, if you look at the grant, the grant is actually really,
It's a very large commitment on.
it is, they provide the kennel, the fencing for the home, all, to make sure that you're well equipped to handle a police canine, it's not a pet,
This is a
Right,
working
right.
dog.
it's a working
It's a
dog.
working dog, but the dog lives with the family.
Absolutely,
So they have to be comfortable with it.
absolutely.
Good.
So,
Need a motion?
well,
No, it's more of just
I guess my next,
need a motion, okay.
I thought so.
well, so my next thought is, right, so chances are, if we implement a K-9 unit and have that program, it becomes a long-term program that would require more than just 2 years of annual funding. Presumably after 7 or 8 years, we would see a request for another dog, which would probably not be grant funded. So I'm really trying to think through, and this is the first time I've thought through whether or not this is a service we really, really need in Enfield. Or whether it's, sort of a nice to have. I like dogs, but whether we really need it. And would it be reasonable to get a budget committee opinion on that going before we make a decision to add?
I think this is very much a select board
Me too.
decision to make. And my feeling is, I would like to see us give it a shot. If we feel that it's not worthy of continuation, there's no law saying we have to go beyond that time that's indicated.
Correct.
I mean, this is a programmatic and operations decision, so to me, if the town manager and chief have brought it to us and we feel that we support it, I think, yes, the budget committee is gonna have to fund that small piece potentially, but the future piece, we can't bind a future board anyways, one way or another, but I feel like we're responsible people in this town. We generally elect responsible people. I feel like at the end of the dog's, involvement in our town and their working career here, that we would evaluate, and we would have periodic boundaries, but we would decide whether we really wanted to make that investment.
The statistics definitely would be available to make those educated decisions after that, like, so, part of this grant is that we have to do quarterly, reports of how many tracks, how many, drug, how many, patrol incidents, stuff like that. So I think that, like, John said, for honestly, what amounts to be a small fee, to have 5 years, have that experience, see what, how did it work out? If it didn't work out, then we can say, oh, we tried, it didn't work out. If it did work out, it's great. And again, that, when it comes to the budget part, I think that's, kind of lies on my shoulders as the administrator or the next chief, in 5 years, if there's a new chief, to kind of sell it to the select board and to the budget committee about, further funding.
So I move that we support the chief in pursuing this grant and entering into this dog training program.
Second,
Whatever.
but yeah, whatever you want to.
Any discussion from the board?
No. I think it's nice.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. So we will move forward 4-1. So you have our support.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you for bringing this to us.
Thank you, chief.
Thank you. All right, moving on, septic rules discussion. All right, so at our last meeting, we had an excellent public hearing where we heard from a large number of people within the community. And because we had heard so much, we gave ourselves some time to think about it before deliberating as a board. So just preface this, that this is in this agenda item is really intended as the board discussing the public hearing and what to do with the subject thing. Certainly not gonna, say people can't speak, but I just want people to remember, this is not the public hearing. This is the select board's deliberation of the public hearing. All right, so that being said, Ed, do you wanna go ahead and set the table where?
Yeah, I can preface a little. As you stated, I think we had a great public hearing. There was a lot of good comments shared on both sides of the subject. It definitely made me think a little bit and rethink some things. So, in your packet is pretty much the septic rule that we had. I made a few, I'm gonna call them recommendations at this point. They're just some thoughts that I had that I put into this septic rule. We still have the old one, if you guys want to stay with that, but, just making a few recommendations to you guys from my thought process going through this. One of those was moving the inspection that was required in the septic rule from being an every 3-year thing to being an every 6-year thing. I think after hearing the discussions and some of the concerns that still moves us forward in the right direction, but it alleviates some of the concerns that were talked about in the public. And then probably the other major concern that we heard, or that I heard during that, was the concern of how the fines or the penalty section was written. That, we had copied the state law that allows up to $1,000. So I just rewrote that some, mostly to say that the health officer and town manager is given the authority to give a fine up to $250 a day by the select board, but also reserves the right for the select board to work within the confines of RSA 485A 37. And I think I put in there with evidence supplied to the select board showing negligence or lack of cooperation by the owner. So I think that's what we heard and we discussed at that meeting. Again, those are just my recommendations, some food for thought as you guys start your deliberation.
And my sense is those, in fact, meet my understanding of the concerns that I think all of us noted and expressed.
I agree. I think the revisions that are here summarize some of the concerns very well. I particularly liked not only the 6-year change, but I also liked the clarification on the holding tank pumping inspection. That cleared up something that was of concern to folks, of course. The fine situation clarifies it quite a bit, I think, appropriately. So I think the changes that I had heard from that public meeting were addressed.
Can I make a request? Are we able to show it? The reason I say that is, well, we're talking about it and we are saying and honored the discussion. It probably feels better if you can see what we're talking about in this case.
Well, this is not a public hearing.
Oh, I know it's not a public hearing, but still, like, people in their mind, I think it's, I would feel more comfortable. I'm not asking for a public comment. I think in particular, when we talk about the fines, I think it's important to call out that some of the language changed to the Enfield Health Officer to issue fines not to exceed $250 each day for neglect or refusal to cooperate. And then it goes on to explain that the select board also maintains the right to authorize the town health officer to issue a fine up to the maximum provided within the RSA. Like, it's a significant change. And I think it's very responsive to one of our biggest complaints people got, where they were terrified of the word 1,000 and ignored the words up to, right? Like, we all know the words up to mean, but it felt uncomfortable to people and scary. And so that was a major component that we addressed.
I would think that we would, or at least I would like to see a public hearing after this is published to allow the public to have an opportunity to review it and give their own feedback.
I don't want to see another public
No.
hearing again, honestly.
We have stood on our heads, I think, so far. I think this is our last good opportunity to make this change. Otherwise, we'll be doing this 3 years from now.
Do we accept it without publishing it?
I would personally, I would like to see some discussion tonight.
Right.
Maybe a little bit more refinement if you'd like to do that, and then I would like to discuss a couple more things with the attorney before we sign it.
Or
We could so we could go through it today, have a final draft reviewed and sign
I
it.
mean, if we have a copy machine, we could make paper
Right.
copies and pass them out.
Should have it, hold on
Yep.
one second.
No, I think that expanding
And I think giving some time.
the inspection to 6 years instead of 3 is responsive. I think the fines is responsive. And also the exceptions are slightly more clear. My only question on the exceptions is, do we want to sort of explicitly exclude commercial activity from exceptions because they tend to have more cyclical use? Like,
You mean like cyclical?
I mean, they tend to fill up faster, like if somebody's renting out a property, it's a very different use than a family using it occasionally. And that usage can happen fast.
Well, one of my concerns as we go through this process is I hate to create a system that's so complex. We're gonna have to pay money to people to deal with it, to authorize it, to manage it. And once we get into that, if we're gonna, have, let's say, B&Bs or Airbnbs or whatever you wanna call them these days, that'll drive us nuts.
And then I think we're back to the short-term rental ordinance.
Yeah,
and I think,
keep it simple.
and the other thing is, I think we need to acknowledge that we heard what people said about the rivers and streams, and that's part of the larger watershed advisory. And so this is one step in a process. This doesn't end or solve all of our problems. And I think we need to acknowledge that as the board and just know that, and the public needs to know that we heard people who asked for more. And, you know, that we're gonna continue this work.
There was a time you could tell what they were dying in the Baltic Mill by
Yeah.
looking in the river.
We have a question from the audience. Go ahead.
Just a question. No, I'm not attempting any public comment.
Yep, no, you're welcome to ask, and please just say your name for a minute.
Brenda Eastman.
Yes, thank you.
So I was just asking, if you could elaborate in your conversation. You said in the revisions, there is a clarification on exceptions. Would you be able to share with us what some of those changes on exceptions are,
Right there.
just for general information?
Yeah, so the holding tank exception, which is the state law, now basically just says they shall abide by the New Hampshire DES regulations and maintain regular pumping and maintain these records to present NHD DES or Town of Enfield Health Officer upon request.
Because we admit the obvious that the state of New Hampshire's laws supersede our regulations. So that's what you have to go by.
And holding tank is an official term and it has a definition from the state. It isn't your grandpa's uncle's cousin's brother dug a hole and put a 55-gallon drum in, right? So we can't play that game where it goes to DES, they make the decision, we don't.
Thank you.
And it did, I mean, we did put in there to maintain the 6-year inspection, where if you're getting it,
Yep.
a holding tank pumped, the person can really look in the tank.
Yeah.
Inspect it and make sure it's not cracked or any of those things.
I was asked a question about systems that have a tank that is before their sewer connection, because we do have a few systems where they have to pump into the sewer. And how do those play into this? And I didn't know the answer to that.
I don't
If they're
understand.
going into the sewer, then they're not,
Some of the
Then they're not part of the plan anyway.
they're not a subsurface solid waste disposal system.
Okay, so we feel confident that those tanks that are
If
before,
not, they would be, I would think they would be
They'd be in the holding. tank.
registered as a holding tank with the state of New Hampshire.
I don't know.
Holding and then pumping at a certain time.
because we definitely do have some, especially that are going into the force main to get it uphill that have that.
So we could definitely work with them in the state of New Hampshire, but I,
Because they have their own pump then, in their tank that pumps it up the
They have a
hill.
sewage ejection pump. which
That's
pumps it.
pretty
Yeah,
common.
that's actually very common.
Yeah, and I don't think, those are not collecting tanks. I suppose if their pump failed, but then they would notice that.
But they wouldn't be,
Right.
they're not a freestanding system. They're gonna be on the sewer system, which is
Right.
not part of this plan anyway.
No, I'm just asking because that is a tank of some
Yeah.
kind. I just wanted to know.
well, and I'd also say that's part of the reason I know we heard a few comments last year about, you know, this policy needs to be super detailed. Well, there's so many different things out there that policy
Yeah.
really shouldn't be.
Mhm.
It's a
Right.
broad brush to make sure you get it, and then, you know, on those case by case basis, we can work with the state and say, what is this registered as? How would it be treated? I'm guessing like Eric, and it's just a guess at this point that that would be considered a holding tank because it holds the sewage until it's pumped into the system.
And every one of those systems I've seen they flow right back into the house if you have them.
Oh, well, you have a backflow preventer, but yes.
You do, but I'm just saying,
I think you're right
but
there.
you stop being able to flush your toilet. pretty quick.
I think you're right. I'd like to see a really robust, like a really robust frequently asked questions available on our website. Because I think, like you're saying, we can't put all those nuances, so things like, who do I ask if I have a question, right? And because for a lot of people, it might be obvious to us or people who come to meetings frequently.
Yeah.
How do I know if my house is in, well, we're gonna tell you.
Yeah.
Right? So those little pieces would be helpful and make people feel probably more confident, and at least give them a resource to start with.
There's a question.
I think Kurt's got his hand up.
Yeah, quick question on the inspection timeline. Will there be, is there requirements in there for the initial inspection?
Yes,
And then it bumps to the 6-year after that?
yeah, so,
The top of page 3.
It's 1 year following the implementation of the policy.
Okay,
Yeah.
that hasn't changed.
and it says in cases where a septic tank or pump chamber has been inspected within the past 6 years and pumped within the past 3 years prior to the adoption of the regulation, the inspection report and proof of pumping must be submitted. So if somebody did it last year,
Right.
that's the start date,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
next year.
And then, well, you alluded to the change of use. Someone has a seasonal, what they're currently using as seasonal, and all of a sudden, new family members decide it's gonna be all year or more than occasional weekend, or they decide to do the Airbnb. Is that, how do you track that? How do you follow up with that if it's,
So exceptions are gonna be handled, let's see, so,
It's right under the
Exercise.
yeah, which page?
Sorry, page 3 again, 3/4 of the way down.
Page 3, yeah.
Engine use.
So the sale of property, one hits it, and there's also change of use or size of structures on infield protected shoreland. It says when a developed waterfront property expands, changes from seasonal to full-time use, or changes the overall use classification, increasing the load on the septic system, the current septic system must be approved by NHDES for the use applied for. If the system does not meet the standards for the proposed use, a new system must be designed, approved by NHDES as stated in RSA 485-A:38 and installed per the select board authority given by RSA 48-A:11.
yeah,
And in the top part of the exception,
Right.
it allows for an exception on the pumping to be a 6-year interval, but it needs to be documented by the inspector that it can be that.
Mhm.
If they start to Airbnb in the middle of that, we're not gonna be able to enforce that. If
Right.
people start calling us and say, hey, there's 20 people here every weekend, we're gonna go make a visit and make
Yeah.
a change, but
yeah.
we're gonna have to rely a little bit on our people, and then at the end, I mean.
Right, but there's backup in the ordinance to allow you to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Then,
Just one quick, and it has something to do with this, but not really. I think the town should make a commitment to test Bicknell Brook in 3 different places. One spot where it's coming off the Grafton Pond Dam, one at Oak Hill Road, and one at the Bicknell Forest. Because if there's stuff coming down there, which Glenn says there is, we ought to know where it's coming from. So I think we should make a commitment to do that as a town.
I would go one step farther and say if we decide to move forward with this, then we look at a few places, the Knox River, Bicknell Brook,
Yeah.
and a few of those.
Exactly, and Shaker Hill Road,
And do
on the
some
Knox
source
River.
action.
I'd even go at the culvert at Holly Drive to see if it's actually the runoff coming down from Lock Haven Road.
Mhm.
That's causing it.
Mhm.
Because if we're seeing it coming in at Bicknell Brook, we maybe see it coming from someplace else, and we might be able to find failed systems out on Grafton Pond Road or what the problem is.
I do see one hand up online. John Essler, go ahead and make a comment.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Is that right?
Yes, you are. We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, good. A nice discussion. Nice to hear some of the changes you're talking about making. And I just want to say, first of all, I want you to know that we're not really looking forward to pursuing legal action to stop this rule from taking effect. Some of the overreaching concerns in this rule are really tough for us, and that's, I don't think you've addressed them yet. Secondly, I want to say something about the inspection. I hear now there will be an initial inspection and perhaps a waiver to 6 years. The problem with the inspection is the fact that the inspection requirement result gets turned over to the town. And the town is going to have to look at that inspection result and make some time of a serious decision, which I don't think anybody in the town can make, that then tells the person what to do. I think it's all right to have an inspection made. And then I think the homeowner should use that inspection on his own or her own to do whatever the person thinks. There are a number of systems out there that will be called in failure that work perfectly well for the use of the client, of the resident, and do no harm to the lakes. I don't want to see this rule go into effect and make everybody upgrade their systems until the time comes when they sell their unit, and then the law will take effect. I think that's enough.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your comment. All right. Anything else? No.
I think it needs to go to legal, right?
Yep. Are we satisfied with this draft as written? Oh, sorry, one more online. Mike Kirk, go ahead and unmute yourself and make your comment.
I would just echo what John Essler just said. I think it's rational. I like the changes the board has made, but I think John Essler just made a great point about inspections, and I'd like to see that encompassed in the regulation. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Those two people. Oh, we have two in the back.
Two things, please.
Sorry, name again, please. I know we've all said our names, but it's much easier for the minute taker if we say it every time.
Brad Goldman.
Yes, thank you.
Does the town have an estimate of when it thinks tributaries and others might kick into this legislation? It could be as much as 4 or 5 years down the road. When we've already established in the prior hearing that 60% of the effluent, if you will, entering the lakes comes from non-lakeside residents.
No time frame has been discussed for the next steps of any potential next steps for expansion of the ordinance. So,
and my second point is that, and please be clear, and the folks that I have spoken with know that I really wish something could be done here. But it's about how and when. If we took, assuming your statistics are correct, about 20% of the runoff or groundwater flow into the lakes is coming from the lakeside residents.
Yes, excuse me one second. I didn't know that this was going to be a public forum.
It is not supposed to be.
And now I'm being called out. So I don't know
and
if
you don't have to respond.
Sorry.
Those are assuming those are the state of New Hampshire Governor's Advisory Board. And there's scientific data that has appeared in peer-reviewed journals. So when you say.
Oh, I'm not questioning that it was yours personally. There's 4 sources of water for every lake in the nation. Rainwater, runoff, groundwater, and tributaries.
This is not a public hearing.
The point is that if we make a 10% improvement in the 20%, that is a 2% net improvement when weighed against the 100. The margin of error of the water testing based on seasonal, rainfall, heat, climate conditions over the previous year is around plus or minus 4% for an annual variation. So we're looking to make a 2% improvement by resident when the margin of error of testing if the water is actually getting cleaner, whether it be cyano or E. coli or several other things, it won't make a statistical difference. So I would encourage the board to look to rapidly take on additional properties that are contributing to that, because we won't be able to measure what the current legislation shows in terms of net improvement of water quality.
Thank you for your comment. Betty?
Hi, Betty Flickda. I just wanted to know, the process for, making Lake residents aware that this pertains to them or not, because there are people who maybe their septic is in front of the house, but the house is at 250, maybe their septic is in the back of the house, but the house is at, so how do we find out as Lake residents? Obviously, I know I'm in that section, but there, for the people that are in the kind of wiggly waggly section, how are all of us gonna find out when and where this starts?
If this gets implemented, the town will notify residents that are impacted by the rule.
By mail?
Probably by mail, yeah.
Shirley Green, I think you've been very generous in listening and making these adjustments. And I strongly urge you to implement this the way it is and not make any more.
Thank you.
The one question I would like you guys to look at that I did not make a change to that was talked about was having the initial inspections in the first year. Whether you guys wanted to do that or make it a longer time period than that. My only fear, I think the year is what we need to do. My only fear is whether or not the inspection community could actually make that.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. What would you recommend the 2-year process?
I don't know. That's why I didn't make a recommendation. I thought we should have a discussion.
I think 18 months would be, because realistically, as you say, it's gonna start April 1st. 18 months would give 2 full summers.
I like 2 years. It's a nice, easy to
I'd like to
remember
start at
number.
1, and if we find we have a problem, this is a health rule, we're allowed to change it.
Yes.
I guess that's where I'm at, like, start with the 1, and if you, say we found, I'm just gonna say catastrophic, every single person's system failed, like, whoa, Armageddon. We'd have to revisit it, and we would.
And people who have had it done within the past 3 years can simply
Turn their thing.
file the paperwork they've already had done.
I've tried very hard not to turn this into a public forum, but I just had 6 inspections done in one day. There were 2 inspectors and they turned it around within a month.
Yeah.
If people choose to wait until the 11th or 12th month to call an inspector and then come in and say, oh, I couldn't get it done, that's on them. You can get this done within a year. I would urge you not to change that.
Thank you.
I agree with the 1-year plan and with Kate, if we need to extend someone for a circumstance, I think we're willing to certainly consider that.
Okay.
Brenda Eastman again, and I just wanted to say, this gentleman, I believe, Brad, I believe you're an engineer with expertise in considerable.
Ma'am, could you face forward, please, and address the crowd, not the audience? The board, rather.
This gentleman, that he is.
I know, but we can't hear you up here.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll speak more loudly also. This gentleman, Brad, who spoke with you, is a very highly qualified engineer. And I would submit to you in this field, very knowledgeable. And I think I would suggest that the comments of people be weighted a bit according to expertise in this whole area. I think that's relevant. I think that's relevant. When you have people who have credentials in this field, and I'm not seeing an acknowledgement, and perhaps because you don't realize who he is. I don't see an acknowledgement. I don't see heightened attention being paid to his comments, but they should be. We should value the opinions of people who are more educated with respect to studies in the area and who have credentials in wastewater. That's my comment. And to you, sir, Mr. Chairman, I simply wanted to commend you for your comments on the K-9 unit grant, where you said the usage, cost benefit analysis, how frequently you would use. I wanted to compliment you.
I appreciate that, but I do want to stay focused on.
No, I know, that's, it's a short statement. I wanted to compliment you on your sensible analysis as opposed to just going with feelings. I like the logic, and I think you should be commended.
Okay, thank you. All right.
I
What
make
is
the
the
motion to
pleasure-
send this to legal.
We need to resolve the 1 year, year and a
Oh, I'm
half,
I
sorry.
think the 1
2
year,
year issue.
the 1 year is acceptable, given the flexibility that's in that.
I think there's flexibility there. The only comment on it, we really have tried to listen to a host of people, including people who have a great deal of expertise, and I respect their opinions, often receiving letters, which I have read religiously, to understand what they're saying. I really feel that this policy has tried to reflect the opinions of the group that appeared before the board on innumerable occasions. And I really do think that this is an appropriate policy moving forward that has really genuinely tried to respect the opinions of people who have a great deal of expertise, as well as just concerned citizens.
So we're agreed, 1 year?
Agreed.
Let's send it to legal.
Well, Kate made a motion. Is there a second?
Second,
Discussion of the motion to send it to legal? All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Do you think you'll have that turned around for our next meeting, or?
It should be done over the meeting after
Okay.
that, but
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot. They've reviewed it once. I just want
Yeah.
to review a couple items and some of the changes we've made.
Thank you, everybody. This has been a long process. We're nearing the end. We really appreciate everybody coming out and staying on this, so thank you. You have a quick comment?
Question,
Yep.
what was the disposition on whether or not the citizens will get another chance to look at this?
So we're gonna send it to legal. When that opinion comes back, we'll have a final discussion, and realistically, we'll probably vote at the meeting that comes at.
We can post the draft.
But yeah, the draft can be posted. Absolutely. It should be.
Thank you.
Okay, let's do my agenda. Next up, Granite Place discussion.
Okay, so I just wanted to come to you guys. I think I talked about it once before when we were in discussions of purchasing the land for the public safety building. But the short little road there that goes back to Shaker Hill, Granite, Nest, and Lincare and the public safety building now we're on is a private road owned by Indian River Realty, who owns the Lincare building right now. I had some talks with Jody early on when we were getting the easement approval to go ahead and purchase the public safety building and to be able to do some construction across that road, that this might be coming. And I just wanted to come to the select board and ask them, I guess, a little bit of your guys' opinion on taking over that road. We will be plowing pretty close to 3/4 of it. I think I put the measurements actually in your write-up, but we'll be plowing that. I know there's more maintenance than just plowing. Long-term, you have paving and all those things, but the road's in really good condition. It's built to Route 4 state spec, so it goes above and beyond what the town road is. And personally, I see us taking over the road as less headache of trying to deal with the other three property owners and get money from everybody to maintain the road and to get permission every time we want to do something on the road. That I think it'd be best to take this short section of road and make it a town road, but I wanted to come to the select board, have a discussion, get your guys' opinion before we started moving through any formal type process.
That makes absolute perfect sense.
Does, I had a question, is 190 feet the far end of the back access point?
I didn't actually go measure. I wanted to have this discussion, but it goes. The plow to the 190 feet would be to our access.
Yeah.
So there would be another
60 feet
40 to 60 feet
of
road before we got to like the shaker.
I'd like to maintain a fairly strict line, given that we had a great deal of difficulty in negotiating the purchase of that property. And I'd like to make it very strict that we will go as far as the end of that second access driveway. And that's it.
Would like to discuss that with the select board. I personally think we should just take the entire road, which is another 60 feet.
How many properties access up that road?
There's 3 total.
But after the 60 feet, then that last 60 feet, after the 190.
About 2, maybe 1.5.
Well, there's 3 because you've got Hess, you've got Lincare, and you've got the Granite Retail
Lincare's
Shop.
on the front side.
They're already,
So there's
Lincare's on the
3
front side, so there are
plus
2.
that access, but past that,
But there could be more at a future point because people can subdivide their properties.
maybe there's not a lot of room out there for that, but
I guess,
possibly, but I think, I mean, you're talking
well, I
a
guess,
very small amount.
so
but-
my experience is if you plow a short section and then someone else is plowing, and right now you might have somebody like Joe Schmo's awesome care that does a great job, and then the next guy comes and he plows it into your access. I think it's too important, and I mean, we're building this brand new building. It's critical for them to have safe access. I'd rather just make the plow loop and be done. I think it's safer, and if you get idiot Elmo's, whatever, right, and they plow in, that's a dangerous. And people have good intent when they plow in and across the road, like they're just cleaning it up, but then sometimes they don't finish it real fast.
I just don't want to see us become the perpetual company, the company that's going to perpetually plow for the retail shop.
Oh, we're not plowing anything other than that road.
well, the section of road that Tracy's talking about essentially becomes their driveway. Once you get past the town's access and the access to the left, which is the landscaping company, right, it's basically their driveway. I mean, I do think that it makes sense to take over at least a portion of it based on our usage of it. But the length of that road, I think we need to take, it essentially becomes driveway after that. I don't think there's a need to be involved in everybody else's. Right, and can you correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, that if it becomes a town road, past it, yeah, basically becomes.
I'm sorry, say that again, I can hear it. Say it again.
If you take it all the way, it becomes a town road all the way.
Right, but we don't have to do all of it.
You could put a hammerhead at the end of yours.
Yeah.
What's that?
What's that?
The turnaround.
It's a turnaround.
Yeah.
It's like a T, so he can go in and then the truck can back out and head back out.
Bill Griffin, does that change the tax base on those properties or just the road?
Just the road. It's just, it would, the change would be the town would be responsible for maintaining the roads. So when it needs to be rebuilt, we would rebuild it as opposed to property owners maintaining their own private road.
So when I talked to Jim Taylor, and we didn't talk about stopping at ours, but if we built the turnaround right at the end of ours, that would pretty much take the rest of that road. That's, I mean, we're not asking for a long drive back in there. I think it's the right thing to take the entire road or not take any of it.
Yeah, and our needs are gonna be a little more perfectionist, I think, right? We're gonna wanna, sand and salt maybe when the average person wouldn't be doing that.
Yeah. I think you're.
So we
asking for
need to
more
hold
problems.
it to a higher standard, which is our standard.
So what do you need from the board this evening?
I just wanted to see consensus if we wanted to take that, if we, you know.
Do you have an opinion, Alice?
Yeah, I'm just trying to envision the end of the road, like it basically turns into Shaker Hill Granite's parking lot.
Well, it dead ends into there, but the extra 50 feet or whatever is just right for there. So it would be, we would probably end up creating some sort of turnaround right there, so it makes it easy to plow and get in, get out.
So you don't plow their parking lot.
No.
What he's saying, basically structural, it becomes like a cul-de-sac, is essentially what the town road would be. A spur with some sort of a loop or a backup area. It essentially becomes a cul-de-sac with lots off of the cul-de-sac.
I would move that we, take over the road.
I agree with a good definition of where the end of the road is.
Yeah.
I think, do you need a motion or just a consensus?
Sounds like
for
you need
us
a
to-
consensus this evening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't want to do a lot of work
Yeah,
putting this
and there
together.
will be a process involved with the other one.
I just visualize. God bless them, I think they're doing great, but at some point that granite company's gonna move, and that's gonna become retail back there. And I don't wanna get us caught in plowing that area.
Yeah, you won't have to plow private property.
That's why I want a definition as to where the end of that road is,
No, absolutely.
Whether it's
We'll define it and
deadheaded or demarked in some fashion.
it's already done. I don't have the information for you, but it's deeded as a road and it has meets and bounds, right?
Yep.
Okay, is that, get you what you need tonight?
Yeah, I'll get you more information as we move forward.
Okay. All right, no administrative items, okay, public comments, is there any comments from the public on items not on the agenda this evening? Go ahead, Dan.
I have a bit of a disappointment in reduction of town clerk's office hours. My disappointment comes from being on the budget committee when we added people to the town offices and we're told good reason is that we can cross-train. And I'm kind of real disappointed that we don't have any evening hours, more so than the Wednesday. I just think that, you know, if you have to register your car, that means you're gonna have to get out of work to register your car, but you're not gonna be able to register it at night.
Mhm.
That's my disappointment.
We don't even have Wednesday anymore. It's gone.
I know,
I thought, I guess I misunderstood. I thought it was temporary.
Yeah, right now it's definitely temporary because we're down to one person.
Right.
She needs a day to do paperwork. There's a lot of paperwork that's due that she cannot do while the window's open.
But we'll be back up to 2 people in the
We'll be
near
back up to
future.
2, and we can discuss the evening thing. I know the clerk wants to get away from that. She's been keeping stats because almost nobody ever comes in on Tuesday night and we have
Yeah.
a lot more people coming in on Wednesday.
The only, I can't go.
I will say that I have gotten a little bit of pushback on that, the evening hours.
I have too, and I think this harkens back to once upon a time, we were told no one goes to the transfer station on Sunday. And we said, show us the numbers.
Yeah.
Show us the no one numbers, and those numbers never came back to us. So show us that no one comes in because
Sundays
frankly,
are very
you get
busy
to
day.
3:29 and they're already leaving. They're like, oh, we already closed out for the day.
I agree it's temporary, but the temporary are people who have to register their cars in October and November.
So we were asked to give a half-time staff member for transitions and training and retirement. And this was during the time we had an interim town manager, and I think it was a reasonable request. That was supposed to be temporary, right? We always have this temporary conversation, so now we have this half-time position that we're floating and using for training for very good reason. This is what you use it for. I know we can't make the clerk by law do anything, but I go back to, we can ask the person we hire and we direct to do it. And if it's a matter of having 2 people in the building for safety, we can assign somebody as a.
I just want to be realistic about the conversation that like, you know, maybe it's temporary, maybe it isn't. Like, it's become very apparent to me that it's not temporary. Like, that's the way the conversation is clearly going. So I just want to be like transparent about it.
Yeah, no, we can definitely have that discussion. I asked her to get me the data for the evening thing so we could have the discussion. You know, I'd like to do it. There's very little you actually have to do in the office. I mean, that's something else to talk about, but I think there's a discussion to be had there. The hours set right now are because our deputy clerk's on maternity leave for the next 12 weeks. We have an election to do, you know. Yeah.
I think, Dan makes a good point. Perhaps the evening hours ought to open back up and we should then study how many people do show up. So we have, you can't study an absent number. You have to actually have people either come in or not. So I think if we open it back up to an evening hour and then let's spend 6 months and determine whether it's worth it. And then we can make a rational decision from
Well,
that
we can
point.
look at it. She's been collecting data for the last year on the Tuesday evening thing, and right now she's collecting on the Tuesday morning when they're normally closed. To get you that data.
Yeah, that'd be good to have.
The public comment?
Tree lighting,
Oh, yes.
we need a date. Christmas happens every year.
It's the Saturday after Thanksgiving, as it is.
Okay, well,
I'm gonna say every year, but we just set that.
We were told that there was not a set date by the party who didn't answer, so.
What tree are we talking about? The one at Hughes
The
Park or the
town-
one at
town
the park?
tree. The town tree is at Hughes Park, yep,
Yeah, the town tree at Hughes Park, not the other tree that's at
that's just the
Lakeside
tree.
Park.
There's a lot of trees down there. I mean, they're very nice trees.
Some people identify
So
that
it
one as
is
the town
the,
tree.
is Saturday,
Yeah,
no, is it Friday? It's usually Friday, right? Is it? It's Friday evening.
It's Saturday.
Is it Saturday evening?
It was a Saturday evening.
Okay, so Saturday, Eve, so it's the seventh.
No, he said it's the after the Saturday.
Oh, that's so
after
weird.
Thanksgiving.
So much for traditions.
I don't know. I
Is
feel
it
like
the
people won't
immediate?
Be back from holiday travels. yeah.
No, it's in December usually.
It used to be the first Saturday of December,
That's what I thought.
following the Enfield Adding Club's Christmas party, which was Friday.
There
You can do that if you would like. There you go.
Listen, we just want a commitment. So is it, we're gonna say the seventh and we're gonna make it happen?
The seventh would be great.
I think it's,
Let me talk to Kevin, because he's already been telling everybody. it's
No,
Saturday after
He hasn't
Thanksgiving.
been.
no, he hasn't. He has been.
No, I don't think it was ever the Saturday after
It is.
Thanksgiving. but-
Yes, he has been telling.
No, but I don't think last year was the Saturday after
And
Thanksgiving.
they expect us to set up the septic system.
Yeah, exactly.
So we can get that sorted out.
Yeah, the one thing I did say is set a date that stays year to year to year,
Which is the date. Alyssa
because it
said
seems
that.
to be different every year. We did it on the Thanksgiving weekend, the first year I was here. And last year it got moved to the first week of December, because Kevin
It used
used to
to
be here, and
It used to be what Elisa said. It was on the town calendar. It was set. During COVID, everybody's afraid of dying. It got moved around and that's when the problem started.
Maybe we need to bring back the town calendar.
Oh!
I think I'm gonna move us on.
it would have been wrong.
No, because Elisa would have put it on the date we know.
I think I'm gonna move us on to the,
Okay.
next item on the agenda, which is a non-public session. The RSA 91-A:3-2A, town manager contract. I would entertain a motion to enter into non-public pursuant to stated RSA.
So move.
I make a motion.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, you got a motion ready. Go ahead.
I make a motion to enter into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, small a.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everybody. We really appreciate it. We will
Thank you.
come back into public session at the, following this.
Have a good evening.